Good afternoon. This is Meteorologist Sergio Mora with an update on the weather and what's been happening the last couple of weeks. I wanted to start to kind of explain the the meteorology behind the floods that have occurred in Texas in the recent weeks. And there's a science to that. There's a lot more than just rain and floods. What caused that? That's the first thing that we want to talk about. And basically, it's more of a science. And that science, it teaches us that, in order for storms to move and have a sense of velocity or speed and move in a certain direction, that has to deal with the winds aloft. Like when the storm and the cloud builds upward, the winds from the top, the upper levels, is what steers storms a certain direction and also contribute to their speed. So if we look at the map here, you can see that there's a lot of things going on in the upper atmosphere that we don't talk about, right? So there's these winds, there's prevailing trade winds, there's westerlies, caused by low pressure systems out there. And all of these storm systems basically are the drivers basically of these storms to move a certain direction. And in the recent weeks here in Texas, we haven't really had a lot of upper level support as far as the winds at the upper levels. So if you don't have that upper level support or the winds, these storms don't really speed up anywhere. They don't really travel a certain direction. They don't really get pushed, in other words, in a specific direction. So what happens is that these storms, when they develop, due to daytime heating and other things like that, any lifting mechanisms, these storms don't really move fast. And so if you have a storm that develops on top of you and doesn't really have that support in the upper levels to be pushed anywhere, that storm's just going to sit there and pour the water down, on the same locations for a very extended period of time. So that's basically what happens. And I'm going to show you here because we have a tropical wave out in the Gulf of, I'm not going to say, some people call it Gulf of Mexico still, some people call it Gulf of America, and for this video, I'm going to call it Gulf of Mexico. So this tropical wave, you can see it's kind of moving, it's getting stirred over to the west. You see that? This tropical wave, whether it becomes a tropical system or not, is expected to make landfall in Louisiana. So what's pushing that storm towards the west, right? So you can see here on the west part, there is sort of a high pressure system that, churns clockwise, or I should say, yeah, clockwise, and it's bumping this system out towards the west. It's pushing it out over here. Now, if you look over here on the top, this is the jet stream, right? And this jet stream during the summer months is farther north, so most of the higher wind speeds are going to be to the northern states. And you can see that that jet stream pushes these storms pretty rapidly from west to east. But in the southern states, we don't really have that support. We don't have that wind speed occurring aloft. So these storms move a little bit slower during the summer months in the southern states. During the winter, of course, we have those cold fronts that kind of push things kind of rapidly, come all the way far south, and we have that jet stream kind of, during the winter and spring months kind of over us in the southern plains, but we don't really have that in the summer. So when these storm systems come through the state, you can see they're very slow compared to the northern states. And that's because there's not a lot of winds, higher wind speeds at the upper levels in the south during the summer. Anyways, for the next couple of weeks, we do have some energy coming into Texas and Louisiana, then more energy coming in for next week, and then maybe another possible tropical wave this time next week coming into Texas. So the rainfall chances are going to continue, unfortunately. And then there are talks about, the end of July becoming very, very warm down in Texas again. As usual, August is usually the hottest month of the year, and that is due to this vigorous high pressure system that you see here developing out in the west. This system causes the heat. It's called the heat dome in the summer. And you can see it turns clockwise, and most of the rainfall does end up staying on the outside of that dome. So it's kind of interesting to see where this placement of this high pressure will be in the next couple of weeks. Because if it stays out here in the west, as this model shows, you can see that the rain and the activity kind of lingers outside the ring. And of course, South Texas would be in that ring of fire that we call, where the storms develop just outside that heat dome. And South Texas might be wet heading into August. It just all depends on where the storm system actually settles. It could settle right on top of us. That means that if this is in the middle, down here, we are stuck with clear skies and very hot temperatures. But if we're just outside of the ring, these storms will be driven by this actual system here into the state with more activity here. So it'll be interesting the next couple of weeks as what happens. Does the heat dome actually stabilizes and settles in the deep south? Does it settle more out towards the west? Does it settle over Texas? As this is typical during the July and August through September, actually. That's what causes the heat, the dangerous heat waves. So that's going to be the question here in the next couple of weeks. But if we are just right outside the ring of this high pressure dome, storms are going to just ride along that ring and then just keep coming into Texas, which would not be the best case for us down in South Central Texas, as we've seen a very wet summer so far. But just to kind of put things into perspective, right? What drives a hurricane? What steers a hurricane? And these are the winds here, these red lines that you see. These are the winds that push these hurricanes a certain direction. So in the summer months, these winds are a little bit weaker. These storms move a little bit slower because they're not really being pushed by any jet stream or any major storm system that might be in place. But nonetheless, here's another picture showing the storm, right? These storm clouds build, and when they build up into the atmosphere, the winds up here are pretty strong, and you can tell that they're blowing from, let's say that this over here is the east and this is west, from east to west, right? Just to kind of just go with the picture. And now you see the upper top of the cloud there. It's kind of steering towards the west, so you know that this storm system over time is going to be moving from right to left, because these winds up here are causing the storm to move a certain direction. Now this is what I'm talking about. We had some tropical moisture come in from the Pacific and the Gulf, and when it met here in Texas, we had these storms develop, but we didn't really see this type of upper level activity. So the winds might have been a little bit weaker. So these storms, instead of traveling east to west, were just kind of just stationary over the same areas. And that is the science of what happened. That's why it's not uncommon to see flooding in the summer months, because these storms travel a little bit slower. In the winter, they're being pushed by cold fronts, by other low pressure systems and high pressure systems. So I just wanted to talk about the science of what contributed to such devastating flooding in Texas. So we'll continue to watch the weather in the next couple of weeks. We want to see where that high pressure system settles. Does it settle more towards the west? That opens more for cold fronts to come farther south to Texas, more frontal boundaries, and more storm systems to be along that ring of the high pressure that I showed there. Or is it going to be farther east? If we had something like this, most of the rain will stay out to the east and over here pretty dry. But again, you could see that there's a lot more activity coming into South Central Texas because this dome stays out to the west. If this becomes the case, then South Texas, we're going to continue wet. But if this high pressure system again settles in on top of Texas, then the heat will return and we'll return back to those normal hot summers. But anyways, that is the science of the weather during the summer months. Make sure that you guys stay safe and continue to listen to your local weather providers here in the next couple of weeks. More updates will be given later. Um, so subscribe to the channel, like if you loved it. Have a blessed day.